Hello everyone! 10 years ago, the Ouya console was released, and it was a total failure. Its promise was to be an Android console that would work in your TV, and one of the main reasons for its demise was the controller itself. So a few days ago, I was checking the retro shop in my area, and look what I just stumbled. Though it was just the controller, I knew I had to pick it up to make a review. I wanted to see how bad this controller really is. After all, they said it themselves.
The most important part of this to us is the controller.
We really focus a lot on what gamers are looking for. Precise controls, tactility, right sizing. What makes Ouya different and gives it the potential of changing the gaming environment is you're able to build things right from the start. You don't have to pay outrageous amounts of money for a dev kit. You don't have to have a lot of credentials, just good ideas.
This unit here is not in the best possible shape. Probably it was sitting in the basement of a collector or something. As you can see, the stickers are still intact. And I doubt that this controller was even used. On the top of the controller, the shutter buttons and triggers have no label, and the plastic is a dust and fingerprint magnet. The faceplate of the controller is made of metal, which is quite cool. I don't think there is any controller with a metallic faceplate, and probably this is the reason why this controller costed half of the console price. But I gotta say, it feels cool to the touch whenever you pick this controller up. Also, the ergonomy makes me think that I'm trying to break this controller in half. Your hands will sit in an angle, as if you were doing this motion trying to snap the controller in half. But it's not uncomfortable at all. It has plenty of space to rest your 3 fingers here. The curves are very smooth and your hand fits in perfectly. The grips are very bulky, and this is very comfortable if you have big or medium-sized hands. Your index fingers will be sitting in the middle of the triggers and shoulder buttons. The face buttons feels cheap, and you can tell that by the noise. The travel distance is too big and they wobble a lot around the shell. The triggers are the worst part of this controller. They're noisy and crunchy. It could really use some lube as you can feel lots of plastic parts rubbing together. The shutter buttons though are pretty good. They're clicky, responsive, and you can press them at any point. But I'm seriously impressed how bad these triggers are. And it could be that this controller is pretty old, but if you check the reviews from the time, you'll see that this is not the case.
These are fine. They feel just as good as the 360 bumpers, but where the Ouya controller fails is these. I don't know what they were thinking, what crack they were smoking, what they were drinking, if they were guzzling moonshine, analog stick, or analog triggers, excuse me. These suck. When I first got the console, these got stuck a lot. You would push it down. I was playing, what shooter was I playing? It's the only one on the Ouya. I'm going to show it with the gameplay footage. But Shadowgun, excuse me. I was playing Shadowgun. These triggers would get stuck. Actually, if you listen, I'm not sure where the mics are on my camcorder. You hear that it squeaks. Hear that?
And yeah, I can definitely agree with this. This is one of the worst triggers I've ever tested. The D-pad is pretty good though. It has a center pivot and it's concave. The front plate of this controller is removable, though it's a bit hard. And inside you have a battery compartment. The front plate is held by magnets, which is pretty good. And each one of the battery compartments have these ribbons that you can pull to release the battery. And surprisingly, this controller still works. I couldn't find how to pair it though. There's no pairing button, so I tried many button combinations. Turns out that you have to press and hold the home button. And it showed up on my Android phone. I jumped right away to test the analog sticks and they are terrible. They have big dead zones in the cardinal directions. And there's other problems too, as the right stick wasn't working. The triggers were working as the stick, and generally the button layout is all messed up. And here you can see why the label of the buttons are all messed up too. Probably to make this controller work only with the Ouya console, which is a terrible decision. And even with the buttons messed up, I could play Super Mario 64. I also tried Retro Arch, and it's messed up here too. And really, it's not worth trying to remap all of the buttons on Retro Arch. I also tested it with all my game adapters, and none of them worked. On my computer, it kept trying to connect, but with no success. Which only leaves us with the Teardown as our next step. The controller is pretty easy to disassemble. All of the screws are visible under the faceplate. And when you remove the analogs, it revealed the potentiometer-based sticks underneath. The back shell is quite dusty and it has an added weight there. And here's the horrible design of the triggers. There's many plastic pieces rubbing together without any lubrication. The board has this flat cable connecting it to the front of the controller. At first I thought that this was for the LEDs, but actually this controller has a touchpad.
Our controller has a touchpad. You're not going to find that somewhere else. And the reality is...
The new PlayStation 4 controller has a touchpad,
That's
doesn't
true.
it?
They could build it for that.
So...
And it really works as a touchpad, but the active area of this touchpad is abysmal. It's just very small. Moving back to the Teardown, the main board is quite complex. There are two boards sandwiched together, with the front board registering the shoulder and face buttons, leaving the rest to the other board. And here you can see the main chip for this board. It reminds me of the ESP32. Maybe I can put it in this controller. Foxlink confidential. Well, not so confidential anymore. And here you can see the pins that connects these two boards together. The potentiometer for the triggers is also visible from the side. The membranes of the face buttons seems pretty strong, and the button layout cannot be changed. The D-pad is also interesting, with half of the pivot in the center. And that's it. Overall, the Ouya controller had potential. It is quite comfortable, and I like the metal faceplate. The D-pad is also very good, but the analog sticks, face buttons, and shoulders destroyed the experience. Not to mention there are no start and select buttons. The touchpad is also terrible, and the button mapping ruined this controller forever, making it only usable with an Ouya console. If you'd like to see more about the Ouya console, check this video from Modern Vintage Gamer. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.